The cold barrel of her rifle pressed against Katherine Cooper's temple as tears streamed down her dirt-stained cheeks. Her father lay dead in the dust not 10 feet away, his gambling debts now hers to bear in the cruelest way imaginable. The year was 1876, and in the unforgiving landscape of the Colorado Territory, a woman alone was as good as currency. $2,500, said Edgar Rutherford, a cattle baron of 53 years whose reputation for cruelty preceded him. His gray-flecked beard twitched as he appraised Katherine like livestock at auction. For the debt and the girl, final offer, the bounty hunter holding the rifle nodded. She's 18, healthy, could fetch more elsewhere, but I ain't one to haggle, Katherine's breath caught in her throat. Her father's final betrayal using her as collateral had sealed her fate. Rutherford owned half the county, and stories of his young wives, who never seemed to last more than a year, haunted the territory like ghosts. Then she's mine. Rutherford's eyes roamed over Katherine's slender figure with undisguised hunger. Get her in the wagon. Across the street, a lone figure leaned against the hitching post outside the Rusty Nail Saloon. Caleb Easton, 31, watched the scene unfold with a tightness in his jaw that belied his otherwise relaxed posture. The lean cowboy's fingers idly stroked the worn leather of his gun belt, eyes narrowed beneath the brim of his hat. "Damn shame," muttered Sam, the aging bartender who'd stepped out to witness the commotion. "That's Cooper's girl. Man gambled away everything, including her, seems like—" "How much?" Caleb's voice was quiet, but there was steel beneath it. Word is Cooper owed Rutherford $2,500. More money than most see in a lifetime out here. Caleb's gaze followed the wagon as it rolled down the dusty main street, carrying Katherine away. Something stirred in him, a sense of injustice that burned hotter than the frontier sun. He'd seen Rutherford's type before, men who bought and discarded human lives like worn-out boots. "Know anything about the girl?" Caleb asked, not taking his eyes off the receding wagon. Katherine, decent sort, kept to herself, tried to make up for her daddy's shortcomings. "Teaches reading to some of the children when she can." Sam shook his head. "Rutherford will break her spirit inside a month." Caleb pushed himself off the post. Maybe, maybe not. For 7 years, Caleb had been drifting, taking cattle drives from Texas to Kansas, Colorado to Wyoming. He'd amassed a respectable sum. Nearly everything he owned was in a bank draft in his pocket, waiting to buy a small ranch he'd been eyeing just north of town. $2,800, a life's work for a man with no family name to trade on. That night, Katherine sat trembling in a locked bedroom at Rutherford's sprawling ranch house. The older man had allowed her to settle in before claiming what he considered his rightful property. Outside, the vast Colorado landscape stretched beneath a sky awash with stars, a beauty that now seemed to mock her imprisonment. A soft knock at her window startled her. When she peered out, she saw a man she vaguely recognized from town, hat in hand, gesturing for her to open up. Against her better judgment, Katherine unlatched the window. "Madam," Caleb whispered, "I don't have much time. I'm here to help you if you want it." Katherine's eyes widened with suspicion. "Who are you?" "Name's Caleb Easton. I saw what happened in town today." His voice was low, urgent. "I'm offering you a way out, but you'll have to trust me." "Why would you help me? What do you want in return?" Her voice trembled with the implication. Caleb's expression softened. "Not that, never that. I just can't abide seeing someone sold like cattle. No one deserves that fate." Something in his earnest gaze made Katherine want to believe him. "How? Rutherford's men are everywhere. Tomorrow at noon, he's meeting with cattle buyers from Denver. Security will be focused there." Caleb glanced over his shoulder. "There's a creek that runs behind the property. Follow it north until you reach the lightning-struck oak. I'll be waiting. If I'm caught, I know." The gravity of what he was proposing hung between them. "It's your choice, Miss Cooper." Katherine studied him in the moonlight, the weathered face that spoke of years under the open sky, the clear eyes that held no malice. "I'll be there." The following day, Katherine's heart hammered in her chest as she slipped out the back door during the commotion of Rutherford's business meeting. She'd stuffed what few belongings she had into a small satchel and wore the only practical dress she owned. The creek was easily found, and she followed it with desperate determination, flinching at every sound. True to his word, Caleb waited by the gnarled oak, 2 horses saddled and ready. "You came," he said, relief evident in his voice. "I couldn't stay," Katherine replied. "He made it clear what tonight would bring." Caleb helped her mount, his touch respectful and brief. "We need to ride hard. Once he discovers you're gone, he'll hunt us both." Katherine finished his thought. They rode until dusk, pushing the horses as much as they dared through rugged terrain. Caleb led them through paths that seemed invisible to the untrained eye, avoiding the main trails. When they finally stopped to rest in a sheltered canyon, Katherine allowed herself to truly look at her rescuer. "Why risk everything for a stranger?" she asked as they shared a modest meal of jerky and hardtack. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. "My mother was sold to pay my grandfather's debts when she was younger than you. She didn't have anyone to help her." The firelight cast shadows across his face. "No one should be bought or sold, Miss Cooper, not ever." "Katherine," she corrected softly. "After today, I think we're past formalities, Mr. Easton." "Caleb, then." A small smile touched his lips. That night, Katherine slept fitfully under the stars, wrapped in Caleb's spare blanket while he kept watch. Her dreams were haunted by Rutherford's face, but each time she startled awake, the sight of Caleb's silhouette against the night sky brought a strange comfort. By dawn, they were moving again. "Where are we going?" Katherine asked as they rode side by side through a meadow dotted with wildflowers. "There's a town called Silverdale, about 3 days' ride from here. Friend of mine owns a boarding house there. You can stay until you decide what you want to do next. And then," Caleb adjusted his hat, "then you'll be free to choose your own path. That's what freedom means." On the second day, disaster struck. They were crossing a stream when the distinct crack of a rifle echoed through the valley. Caleb's horse reared, throwing him into the water as blood bloomed across his shoulder. "Caleb," Katherine cried out, dismounting quickly to drag him toward the protection of the nearby rocks. "Rutherford's men," Caleb gasped, pressing a hand to his wound. "They must have picked up our trail." Katherine tore a strip from her petticoat and bound his shoulder as best she could, her fingers trembling but determined. "Can you ride?" "Have to." Caleb gritted his teeth against the pain. "But they'll keep tracking us." They managed to escape the immediate danger, but by nightfall, Caleb was feverish. Katherine found a defensible spot in a rocky outcropping and helped him dismount. His skin burned beneath her touch as she cleaned the wound using water from their canteens. "You should go on without me," he murmured, eyes glazed with pain. "Not a chance," Katherine replied firmly. "I'm not leaving you to die out here." "Stubborn woman," Caleb said with a weak smile, says the man who risked everything for a stranger. She applied a fresh bandage, her touch gentle but sure. That night, as Caleb's fever raged, Katherine kept vigil. She bathed his forehead with cool water and spoke softly to him, telling stories of her life before her father's gambling had consumed everything. How she dreamed of starting a proper school someday. How her mother had taught her to read and write before dying of fever when Katherine was 12. In his delirium, Caleb spoke too of cattle drives under endless skies, of the small ranch he'd been saving for, of a life spent wandering but never quite belonging anywhere. By morning, his fever had broken. Katherine, exhausted but relieved, was curled up asleep beside him. Caleb watched her for a long moment, the rising sun painting gold across her features. Something twisted in his chest, a feeling he hadn't allowed himself in years. "Thank you," he whispered when she finally stirred. Katherine smiled sleepily. "We're even now." They continued their journey, moving more cautiously. Caleb's wound slowed them, but Katherine proved to be a capable companion, taking on more responsibilities without complaint. They shared stories to pass the time, discovering commonalities. Neither expected: a love of literature, a dry sense of humor, a stubborn independence that had served them both in different ways. On the afternoon of the 4th day, they spotted riders on the horizon. 5 men moving with purpose. "Rutherford doesn't give up easy," Caleb muttered, scanning the terrain for options. There's a mining town a few miles east. We might find help there. They pushed their tired horses toward the cluster of buildings that marked Buffalo Creek, a silver mining settlement that had seen better days. As they rode in, the few inhabitants eyed them warily, a bloodied man and a woman in a travel-worn dress made for an unusual sight, even in a place accustomed to rough characters. "We need help," Caleb announced to the bearded man sweeping the porch of what passed for a general store. "5 men on our trail," the man spat tobacco juice into the dust. "Rutherford's boys been through here yesterday asking questions, offered good money for information." Catherine's heart sank. "Please," she said. "He bought me to," she faltered, unable to speak the words. "To make her his unwilling wife," Caleb finished, his voice hard. "I got her away, but they're determined to take her back." The storekeeper studied them both, then nodded slowly. "Rutherford's no friend to this town, foreclosed on half the mines hereabouts when silver prices dropped." He gestured toward a weathered building across the street. "Sheriff's office there. Abel's a fair man, might help you." Sheriff Abel Matthews was a battle-scarred veteran of the Civil War with a deeply lined face and eyes that had seen too much. He listened to their story without interruption, then leaned back in his creaking chair. "Legally speaking, Miss Cooper, your father had no right to sell you. You're a free woman under the law." He scratched his graying beard. "But law's a funny thing out here. Men like Rutherford tend to make their own. We just need somewhere to hide until they pass through," Caleb said. The sheriff's gaze lingered on Caleb's wounded shoulder. "Doc Powell can see to that. Meanwhile, I suggest you two stay out of sight at the widow Winters' place. She takes in boarders, keeps to herself." Martha Winters proved to be a taciturn woman in her 60s who asked few questions and expected prompt payment. She showed them to a small room at the back of her house, far from curious eyes. "1 room's all I got," she said matter-of-factly. "Figure out the sleeping arrangements yourselves." After she left, Katherine and Caleb exchanged awkward glances. "I'll take the floor," Caleb offered immediately, "with that shoulder. Don't be ridiculous." Katherine gestured to the narrow bed. "We're both adults. We can share for 1 night." The local doctor visited shortly after, rebandaging Caleb's wound and leaving a bottle of laudanum that Caleb refused to take. "Need to keep my wits," he explained after the doctor left. As night fell, the tension in the small room grew. Katherine sat by the window watching the street for any sign of Rutherford's men. "What will you do after this is over?" Caleb, who'd been checking his pistol, looked up. "Had plans to buy a small spread north of Silver Creek, good water, decent grazing. Had." He holstered his weapon with a sigh. "Used most of what I had to pay off your father's debt." Katherine turned sharply. What are you saying?" Caleb wouldn't meet her eyes. "Rutherford wouldn't just let you go. I offered to pay the debt, all of it. $2,500. Katherine's voice rose in disbelief. "You gave a fortune to a man like that, for me, for your freedom." Caleb finally looked at her, his expression sincere. "It was the right thing to do." Katherine crossed the room and knelt before him, taking his hands in hers. "No one has ever," she stopped, overcome. "Thank you doesn't seem enough." "It's enough," Caleb said softly. That night they lay side by side in the narrow bed, a careful distance between them despite the cramped space. Neither slept much, aware of the other's presence, of unspoken words hanging in the air between them. Dawn brought the sound they'd been dreading: horses entering the town, men's voices calling out questions. Sheriff Matthews appeared at their door before the sun had fully risen. "They're here," he said without preamble. "5 of them, armed and asking for you both by name." Katherine's hands trembled as she fastened her dress. "What do we do?" "I've sent word to Judge Wilson in Silver Creek," the sheriff replied. "He'll confirm what I told you. No man can legally sell another human being, not even his daughter. But until he arrives, they won't care about legalities," Caleb interrupted, buckling on his gun belt despite his injured shoulder. "Rutherford wants his property back and his money." Sheriff Matthews' expression hardened. "This is my town, Mr. Easton. I don't take kindly to men riding and making demands." From their window, they watched as the sheriff confronted the riders in the middle of the dusty street. Words were exchanged, voices rising. When one of Rutherford's men reached for his gun, several townspeople emerged from buildings with rifles raised. "Seems the sheriff's not alone in disliking Rutherford," Caleb observed. The standoff continued for tense minutes before the riders reluctantly withdrew to the saloon, clearly planning their next move. "They won't leave empty-handed," Katherine said quietly. Caleb's jaw tightened. "No, they won't." He turned to her suddenly. "Do you trust me?" "Yes," she answered without hesitation, surprising herself with the certainty of it. "Then I need you to stay here no matter what happens." Before she could protest, Caleb slipped out the door. Katherine watched from the window as he crossed the street to the sheriff's office. 20 minutes later, he emerged with Sheriff Matthews and 3 other men, all armed and walking with purpose toward the saloon. Katherine's heart pounded as she lost sight of them. Minutes crawled by like hours until gunshots shattered the morning quiet. 1, 2, then a volley that made her duck instinctively. When she dared look again, people were running toward the saloon. Unable to bear the uncertainty, Katherine rushed outside, ignoring Martha Winter's warning shout. She pushed through the gathering crowd until she reached the saloon entrance. Inside, 2 of Rutherford's men lay dead on the sawdust-covered floor. Another was being handcuffed by the sheriff. The remaining 2 were cornered, hands raised. And there was Caleb, standing tall despite the fresh blood seeping through his shirt where his wound had reopened. "It's over," Sheriff Matthews was saying. "You boys are under arrest for attempted murder and threatening an officer of the law." One of the cornered men spat on the floor. "Rutherford won't stand for this. He owns judges from here to Denver." "Not this judge," came a new voice from the doorway. A distinguished older man in a black coat stepped into the saloon. "Judge Wilson, gentlemen, I happened to be passing through on circuit when I received the sheriff's message." Katherine watched in amazement as the judge produced legal documents from his satchel. "I've reviewed the situation. Miss Cooper is legally a free woman. Any claim Mr. Rutherford thinks he has on her is null and void. Furthermore, Mr. Easton's payment, while unnecessarily made, was done under duress and is therefore refundable." "He won't give it back," Caleb said tiredly. Judge Wilson's smile was thin. "Mr. Rutherford has more pressing concerns. Federal marshals are currently serving him with papers regarding suspicions of land fraud. I doubt he'll be troubling anyone for some time." The relief that washed over Katherine was so profound she nearly collapsed. Caleb was at her side in an instant, his good arm supporting her. "You're bleeding again," she admonished, noticing the growing stain on his shirt. "Worth it," he replied with a weak smile. "You're free now, truly free." In the days that followed, Caleb recovered his strength at Martha Winter's boarding house, with Katherine rarely leaving his side. Judge Wilson had indeed secured the return of Caleb's money, minus a small administrative fee Rutherford's lawyer had somehow justified. "So your ranch is still possible," Katherine said as they sat on the porch one evening, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. "It is." Caleb's fingers tentatively found hers on the wooden armrest. "Though I've been thinking it's an awfully big house for just one person," Katherine's breath caught. "Is that so?" "A ranch needs a school," he continued, his voice soft but steady. "Children out here deserve education just as much as those in the cities. It would be a shame to deprive them," she agreed, her heart racing. Caleb turned to face her fully. "Katherine, I know we've only known each other a short while, but these days have shown me more about you than years might reveal about someone else. Your courage, your kindness." He paused, gathering himself. "I'm not offering you another cage. You're free to go wherever you choose, do whatever you dream. But if you wanted to build something together, a home, a school, a life, I'd be honored to stand beside you." Katherine studied his face in the fading light, the earnest eyes, the quiet strength that had saved her not through violence but through sacrifice. "Are you proposing, Caleb Easton?" Inelegantly, but yes. He squeezed her hand gently. "I'm asking if you might consider becoming my wife, not because anyone sold you or bought you, but because you choose it freely." Tears welled in Katherine's eyes. "I've had precious little choice in my life until you came along. It seems fitting that my first truly free decision would be this one." She leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, a gentle kiss that carried the promise of many more to come. Yes, Caleb, my answer is yes. They were married 2 weeks later in Buffalo Creek's small church, with Sheriff Matthews giving the bride away and Martha Winters surprising everyone with a 3-tier cake. Judge Wilson officiated, making special mention in his remarks of the sanctity of freedom and the power of choosing love over possession. The journey to Caleb's ranch, their ranch, now took 3 days of easy riding, giving Katherine time to absorb the vastness of the landscape that would be her home. When they crested the final hill and the property came into view, she gasped at the beauty of it: rolling meadows bordered by aspen groves, a clear creek winding through the valley, and a sturdy cabin nestled against a backdrop of mountains. It needs work, Caleb said, watching her reaction anxiously. The roof leaks in one corner and the corral needs rebuilding, but Katherine silenced him with a kiss. It's perfect. As summer turned to fall, they built their life together. Katherine opened a small school in one room of their expanding home, teaching the children of neighboring ranchers and the town 5 miles away. Caleb's careful stewardship made the ranch prosper, his reputation for fair dealing bringing business from as far as Denver. On their first anniversary, they sat together on their porch swing, watching the sunset just as they had the night of Caleb's proposal. I have something for you, Caleb said, pulling a small package from his pocket. Katherine unwrapped it to find a delicate silver pendant. Engraved on its surface was a single word, freedom. To remind us both, Caleb explained, of what brought us together and what we must always protect for ourselves and for others. Katherine fastened it around her neck with trembling fingers. I have something for you too, she whispered, taking his hand and placing it gently on her still flat stomach. Come spring, we'll need to make room for one more in our school. Caleb's eyes widened, joy spreading across his features like sunrise. He gathered her in his arms, his embrace gentle but fierce with love. A family of our own, he murmured against her hair. A family born in freedom, Katherine agreed, with a story worth telling. As stars appeared in the darkening sky, they remained entwined on the porch of the home. They'd built together not a cage, but a sanctuary. A place where love wasn't bought or sold but freely given, where the price of freedom had been paid in full, and where the future stretched before them as vast and promising as the frontier itself.